With New Mexico and other states facing the possibility of federal cuts to early childhood and safety net programs, top lawmakers have created a new legislative panel to study the implications. In one of the largest fentanyl tracking crackdowns in U.S. history, the DEA dismantled a massive drug operation spanning 5 western states. Christian Ortega Lopez, a Venezuelan man accused of being an undocumented immigrant in possession of firearms, appeared in federal court on Wednesday. And a pending hearing will determine whether Corky used books must pay thousands in fines or continue allowing unhoused individuals to shelter in their parking lot. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Thursday, May 1st, and I'll have more on those stories in a few moments, plus a look at the weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
With New Mexico and other states facing the possibility of federal cuts to early childhood and safety net programs, top lawmakers have created a new legislative panel to study the implications. With more on this, I'm now joined by the Journal's Capitol Bureau Chief, Dan Boyd. Dan, thank you so much for joining me. Dan, we've had a lot of conversations over the past few months about the implications of federal funding cuts and how they could affect New Mexico, and now the possibility of that is so strong that lawmakers have created this panel.
Yeah, this is something we heard a lot of rumblings about during the session. Even Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham saying that she might have to call a special session later this year if there are federal funding cuts to Medicaid or other programs. But as you indicated, this week is the first time that the legislature is kind of starting to take a little bit of action in response to this. It's still unclear exactly what or if those federal funding reductions might look like or what areas might be targeted. But as you mentioned, a group of top-ranking legislators agreed this week to create a new legislative panel that's going to be meeting kind of this summer and kind of studying different federal programs in New Mexico and looking at the, how those programs are paid for and their implications, kind of to be ready if and when those federal decisions or congressional votes are approved.
And Dan, as your story points out, this committee will examine possible cuts to programs like Head Start, Medicaid, even expanded work requirements for SNAP. These are all programs that could affect a lot of residents here in New Mexico, especially low-income residents.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked before about Medicaid and obviously how many New Mexicans are enrolled in that program, but we're also, very reliant on a lot of these other federal programs that you just mentioned. The former food stamps program, now known as SNAP, Head Start, which provides, early childhood services. A lot of these programs are present in New Mexico and a lot of New Mexicans depend on them. So I think, this committee will start kind of looking right away at these. I think the expectation is they'll provide a report sometime this year and hopefully, by then we might have a little more clarity on exactly what the federal budget might look like and can kind of plan accordingly when it comes to New Mexico. The positive thing for the legislature, as we've talked about, is the state does have a lot of revenue right now, a lot of money to, at least in the short term, be able to absorb if there are some federal budget cuts, but kind of long term, there would have to be a place, to absorb some of those reductions, especially if it comes in Medicaid or SNAP or some of those type of programs.
And just to put some figures out there, Dan, so our listeners understand how many residents here in New Mexico rely on these programs, 40% of residents are enrolled in Medicaid, 22% are receiving SNAP benefits, so quite a bit of the population here in New Mexico relying on those federal programs. But as far as this committee goes, it is a bipartisan one. It's going to be led by Representative Patricia Lundstrom and Senator Bill Souls, and they begin work this month and could have findings by the end of the year, though a possible extension into 2026 could happen.
Yeah, I mean, just given that uncertainty on the federal level, I talked to a few top legislators today. They said the idea is this committee will only probably exist for this year to kind of prepare for whatever is coming down the pipe from Washington, D.C. But there's the possibility that if this kind of stretches into next year, that this committee could be extended and kind of have its shelf life extended into 2026 and continue its work then.
And Dan, it's not just programs like Medicaid and SNAP that this committee is going to be looking at, but they're going to be assessing all federal funding streams that are critical to infrastructure and public services here in New Mexico, just so they're prepared for anything that might happen.
Yeah, I think there's a wide range of programs and all of them are funded differently. Medicaid, the state kind of pays for it, but then gets a federal match, a 3-to-1 match. Other programs are kind of grant programs, where they have to apply for federal funding. So I think that's a big part of this is just making sure the state has this information about here's how these programs work, here's how much money the state is getting, and here's how they're funded, because there's a lot of different proposals in Congress, and it's been hard to kind of tell for sure which ones have traction and which don't. But I think the thinking is that the new state budget year will start in July, and then a new federal budget year in October. So by then, hopefully should have some more clarity on some of these issues.
So with possible federal funding cuts on the horizon, New Mexico state lawmakers are looking into how the state can best prepare. Journal Capitol Bureau Chief Dan Boyd with the latest. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
In other headlines from the newsroom, in one of the largest fentanyl tracking crackdowns in U.S. history, the DEA dismantled a massive drug operation spanning 5 western states, seizing over 4 million fentanyl pills, 4.4 million in cash, 79 pounds of meth, and dozens of weapons. The alleged ringleader, Humberto Salazar Amaya, was arrested in Portland, Oregon, with 13 others indicted by a federal grand jury in Albuquerque. The group is accused of running a vast criminal enterprise that distributed drugs across cities like Denver, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Salem, using couriers on scheduled delivery routes. Several defendants, some with ties to Mexico, are being held pending trial. Prosecutors cited the widespread destruction caused by the operation and are pushing to keep the accused behind bars. Christian Ortega Lopez, a 23-year-old Venezuelan man accused of being an undocumented immigrant in possession of firearms, appeared in federal court Wednesday for a detention hearing despite not seeking release. He has been in custody since a February raid at the home of former Doña Ana County Judge Yoel Cano, where Ortega Lopez and 2 others with pending immigration cases had been staying. Prosecutors allege Ortega Lopez is tied to the Venezuelan Tren Agua gang, citing tattoos and social media posts, evidence the judge said was not properly presented in the initial March hearing. Judge Damian Martinez questioned the reliability of such evidence and criticized the prosecution for withholding key materials earlier. Meanwhile, Yoel and Nancy Cano were arrested last week for allegedly tampering with evidence linked to Ortega Lopez. Since Ortega Lopez has agreed to remain in custody, the judge will issue a ruling soon, noting the seriousness of pretrial detention decisions. And a pending hearing will determine whether Quirky Used Books in Northeast Albuquerque must pay thousands in fines or can continue allowing unhoused individuals to shelter in its parking lot. The city argues the store is violating zoning laws and multiple ordinances, citing complaints from neighbors and other businesses. Owner Gilliam Curley, who declined a settlement offer from the city, said he will appeal any adverse decision, raising constitutional issues about the rights of unhoused people. The city contends the store admits to violations and should pay for safe outdoor space designation, an option Curley says is financially unfeasible. A decision from the hearing officer is expected by May 9th. If you like hearing all of the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal here on the Leading News, consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal. You can check our show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription and keep up with all the latest news from New Mexico's leading news source. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today you can expect mostly sunny skies with a high near 80, and as for this evening, mostly cloudy with a low around 51. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. That's the Leading News. I'm Gino Gutierrez. We'll see you again tomorrow.